Happy Monday, everyone. Can you believe it? It's Monday, April 11th. I'm getting together with Ronnie, and we're going to be talking about raw vegan myths, part 2. But just so you know, it's the very last day of the Ultimate Raw Vegan Bundle. After this, it's kaput. There is no extensions. I can 1000% guarantee that. At the end of this night, 11:59 p.m. PST, the bundle's done. It's gone. If you didn't get the deal, I'm sorry. You missed the 98% off. We're going to be poking you. We're going to be prodding you. We're going to be saying, check it out, because we get people coming at us afterwards all the time saying, I missed it, or I procrastinated, or I was about to get it, and then I didn't. And this deal is completely insane. It's seriously ridiculous. Just so many good courses in there that are worth way more than the $49 by themselves. And even though they're marketed as mini courses, some of them are just full-on courses. Highly recommend you check it out. You can grab it in my link, or you can grab it in Fruity Ronster's link if you want to show him some love. So I see he's in the chat here. We're going to bring him in here. Welcome, everyone. Let's see what Fruity Ronster, Ronnie Smith in the house. Yeah, pull that back. Get ready for it, because your wig's going to get hit back with these facts. What's going on, man? How you doing? What's going on, Ronnie?
Hello, Chris.
Just
Hello,
everyone. Last
everyone.
bite of banana to get that extra energy and to tell it to us straight, hey?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good post pre-live snack.
Absolutely.
Banana.
Absolutely, yeah. I pounded back a nice smoothie. I guess I shouldn't say pounded it back, but I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it. But I want to say, man, I think this is an amazing topic. I love both your books, part 1 that was in a previous bundle and part 2 in this bundle. I think you're doing a really valuable service, because just like there's a lot of different ways of doing a raw food diet, there's a lot of different thoughts around what makes sense and, you know, what is appropriate and what is the truth and what isn't. And I think both of us know there is a lot of misinformation out there. And it's not that we want to make people wrong or anything like that, but we've seen people have a much harder time applying the lifestyle because of misinformation and, you know, facts that aren't really facts, right? So what I'd love
Absolutely.
to get, yeah, it's pretty crazy, you know. And just one thing I'd really like to put out there is the reason why a lot of us do the low-fat approach and why we hold, you know, an approach such as the 80-10-10 diet so high is because it doesn't just follow one study or one little bit of information. It follows the largest scientific consensus around vegan diets and, you know, dietary nature in general, right? And, you know, I know that you're really well researched. You like to look into things a lot, and all the things you say, you can back up, not just somebody saying like, oh, but blah, 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 right? Like you actually like to dig in and get some points of reference.
I like to dig, but I want to say that I'm open to learn, and it's partly one of the reasons I put this information out as well, is I'm happy to get people coming back to me and say, by the way, that part is wrong, or that part, I would say that there's a different side to that, or something. So I like the debate. I like the conversation. I think as people that are trying to share this raw vegan lifestyle, I think that in the past, we've seen a lot of misinformation creep in the raw foods world, and to the extent that people were putting their ability to sell various products like superfoods maybe, or certain type of supplements, they put that as more important than actually sharing things like the basics of eating fruits and vegetables, and they would almost cast a bad name over eating conventional fruits and vegetables, and give people bad information and create like a diet that is impossible to do. And then the whole raw foods movement loses complete credibility. So I think that it's good for us to continue to have a good debate with different ideas, different opinions, and share the stuff that we're learning and the stuff that the evidence that we're finding. And I think it's absolutely fine for someone to say, this is my experience, this is what I've seen, this is what works for me. I think that's totally fine, as long as we understand, okay, that's what they're saying. It's their experience, and we can check into it further and see if it works for others as well. So I've enjoyed writing these books, but I think the main thing that's inspired it, Chris, has been we can all have debates about I don't know, are cashews fully raw, or like should we incorporate freeze-dried fruits and vegetables into our diet? Is that optimal? Are nightshades up? We can talk about all these little things, right? That's fine. But sometimes there's information that's really leading to harm for people. And
Yes.
not just they can't do the diet or they fail in the diet. That's bad enough. But sometimes like going down really bad roads in their
Yeah.
life, and that's what really inspires me, I guess, to think I need to get some information out there and try and just get people on the to have the fortune that I had to come across people like you, people like Doug, people like even Harley back in the day that were kind of just catching you and saying, listen, don't listen to all that stuff. This is what you need to do. Like, get on this path. It's simple, easy, like, and forget about all the other stuff. This is what works. And I was fortunate enough to have that, so I try and pass that on.
Absolutely, man. Me too. Me too, you know. And I think sometimes the big difference too is when things are motivated from a stance of fear, you know, like motivated from a place where it's like, oh my gosh, if you don't do this, then this can happen. Or, you know, like this is just so crazy. And if you don't do my special thing, then oh my God, you know, like you'll never get clean if you don't do this. You know,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
pretty wild.
Yeah, it's wild, and it's like there's a part of me that goes, okay, I respect the entrepreneurship, the marketing side of things, of people putting the message out there or whatever they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like if someone takes a supplement or something that doesn't really work, or goes for an eye exam or iridology and it doesn't really, like, some of these things aren't that harmful in some ways, and it might get a person in start to think about their health and think about making changes. So there might be some benefit to it, but I see where some people are going, but there's a line where it becomes like, okay, now you're sort of really making it difficult for people, or really sharing information that's going against what will help them. So I get it to some degree. I also get the idea of like, but I think of it the other way. Like if I'm sort of sharing people about this lifestyle, and this is personally what I believe, like, when I look at the other foods, even the cooked foods and the animal products, all that stuff, more so the animal products, I genuinely look at that and I think that's disease, that's death, that's misery, that's depression. That's how strong I feel about that, you know. And I get that for other people, they will say, well, I can have a little bit of that in my diet. That's not the way that I think about it. I see all of that. So if I'm telling people about the raw vegan diet, I'm also going to tell them about, here's what you really should be scared about. Like, if you're going to have fear about the wrong diet, the bad foods that legitimately, definitely are leading towards disease, that are leading to pain, and that might sound as well like I'm causing fear, but I feel like I'm just putting out the correct level of, like, the warning of a correct warning about a real risk that is happening to many, many people who, I mean, not everyone ends up with, multiple sclerosis in their early 20s or rheumatoid arthritis when they're 19. Not everyone does, but there's a whole bunch of people that do because of that diet. And that's the real risk that people have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And on a similar page, like the way I look at it, when I see things that people call food, I say, I see a friend, it's not even food. It's a good friend, that has feelings and, doesn't deserve to be called food or to be called meat. It's like, that's not meat. Like, is this meat? No, this is my arm.
It's heavy. And, from a young age, we get trained to believe that that's normal, that it's normal for your food to be totally out of line with what you actually want to eat. Like, it's so bizarre. And I was thinking about, you're a chef, and you can make all sorts of raw food delights, but it really relies upon those raw foods tasting good in the first place. Yeah. And like in the cooked food world and in the animal products world, these foods don't really taste that good or have much flavor. And the chefs get turned into these artists because they're able to take this stuff that just doesn't even look like food or taste like food and turn it into something that tastes quite amazing to people. Yeah. and look amazing.
I'll take the backhanded compliment, but I what I'm trying to say is Mother Nature's the best chef, and I've got it easy as a raw food chef. Like, we really do. When you get good quality produce, it's like you got to mess up to make it not taste good, really,
Yeah. Well, I was more so trying to make a point than trying to besmart your own chef skills. But you know, when it comes to, yeah, I mean, we can do that. We can make raw. There are raw foods sometimes that don't taste so good, and we can make them taste better and all that. So there's that as well. But there's this whole world of like, isn't it amazing that these guys make this food taste good? But that's like in the mind of the person, is because it starts off not having any flavor and not tasting good and not looking like food. It's just so funny. So I'm interested in that, and we get attacked by, you know, ex-vegans and all these people, and sometimes they probably send you messages. I get some messages sometimes, and it's to me there's a real delusion there. Like, and it's simple, like showing a cat, or just imagining walking outside and you're really hungry and a cat or a dog or a pig or something falls over and dies. Like, it's just not food. Like, no one's like, that's obvious. Everyone would agree with that. Like, it's not even like, if you're starving, maybe you're going to try and eat something. But yeah, it's a bizarre world, we're in.
You really have to be brought up with it. You know, there are studies that show if you're not basically put into a situation where you're shown like killing and being kind of forced to kill at a young age, below age 7, then you'll never have a taste for it. But, you know, I was just talking with Nate the other day, and he was kind of talking about how, like, you know, when he was young, his father or grandfather killed a fish, and he was like destroyed by it, distraught by it. But they told him, like, this is what men do. Like, this is what we have to do. And it went against every nature, and it goes against every kid's nature when they're first exposed to that. But then they're convinced, you know, they're told, and they're basically forced into that ideology, and that can be ingrained, right? But seeing kids, you know, like I always love that example. Like, you know, put a kid in a room with like a rabbit and some apples, and they're always going to eat the apples and play with the rabbit. They're not going to, you know, rabbits and puppies and cats, they're not going to grab it and try and eat it. You know, it's not
Absolutely.
our nature.
It's amazing. Like, and watching kids is just such an eye opener for me, because you can sometimes go, well, maybe it's you get taught about this and you learn this and that, but then when you see children, and I've got a niece and a nephew, and I've been around them a few times, and it's been so funny that sometimes I literally have to stay out of the room while everyone else has dinner, because if I come in with fruit, the kids will be looking over like, hey, I want to eat that. Like, so like, you know, they train these children to eat in a certain way. They train them to eat like them. And I would see, we struggle, like when we help people with the raw vegan diet, we'll say like, okay, you need to eat more fruit, you need to, and they're like, oh, I can only have 1 or 2 pieces of fruit, then I'm full. And I'll see my not even 2-year-old nephew, and he'll eat 3 bananas like in minutes. 3 bananas, and then he's going for number 4. It doesn't look like he's going to stop, and his mum says, no, don't eat too much. So people get taught like to not eat the natural way that people are just, and it's so funny because there's a guilt in people. There's something that we've been, where you give them a delicious fruit. Like, I remember giving my auntie for the first time a persimmon, and she'd never eaten one. Yeah. And she was just like, wow, that's amazing, but I can't have too many. Yeah. And I was like, eat as many as you like, but you know, they only want to have 1 or a little piece, or and it's very sad. People have been really sort of trained away from eating fruit.
Absolutely. I think people, you know, they're either afraid of being seen as a piggy, or they're just used to eating such high calorie per volume food. So they're like, this is really sweet, it's got to be really bad for me, or it's got to be too high, or somebody made them afraid of sugar. And I just want to share a little story that I think you'll get a kick out of, and it's really awesome. It's kind of along the same lines. I remember this one year, it was quite a while back, probably like 8 or 9 years ago. I went to my friend's son's birthday party, and his son was like 5 or 6 years old. And I didn't have much. I didn't know what to bring him. You know, I decided to take a shoebox and fill it up with a whole bunch of different fruit, most of it decently ripe and some just a little underripe. It was a full shoebox of fruit. And I remember there was a couple of really nice ripe peaches and nectarines in there. Anyways, I went to this birthday party, and you know, I had wrapped it and everything, and the family and cousins and grandma were there, and they're giving him all this stuff, and he's opening up these big presents. And I remember for one, he opened this big thing that was probably worth like $80, and, you know, really fancy toy, and he like rips it open, and like and then like puts it aside immediately and like rips it open like, oh, yeah, and then like puts it away. I gave him the box of fruit. He opened it up and he started shaking. He was actually like, ah, like that. And he like started like seriously, he got up, he grabbed it, he like ran up to me, hugged me, and started eating the peach. And he wasn't even looking at anything else. And it was like, I'm not even exaggerating it. It blew me away because I thought he'd maybe be like, oh, thanks, good. But he was like, it was the most reaction he got out of any present they got him. It was given.
Yeah, it's wild how people can react to fruit and how kids react to fruit. And I honestly think that, like, the only thing that needs to happen for the health of the world to change really quickly is just allow children to eat fruit. Like, have it in schools, have it everywhere. Like, have buffets of fruit available for free or subsidized for children to eat, for young children to eat, and they will all develop a habit really quickly of eating more fruit, and that'll last them for life, I believe.
Yeah.
And you know, I think there's a lot of stats of like, if people would eat 5 pieces of fruit a day, that there'd be like 1 million less cancer deaths, there'd be 2 million less heart disease. Like, there's so many, such a huge. It probably would be more actually, you know, but because they'd probably eat even more than that. But it's so sad, and it's so, when we get together to share fruit, it's so fantastic. Like, it's so fun and so nice. And when there's those moments where there's like, where there's a bunch of fruit, but then someone finds, oh, this is the thing that's really good right now, and then everyone's eating it together, and like, it's such a great experience. It's way better, and fruitarian meals last longer. Like, we can be eating for 2 hours together. Everyone else eats for like 20 minutes, and then they're dealing with like all the heartburn and the burps and the pain and everything, and their face is getting red and sweaty and everything. But we're like having these conversations, and the fruit and everything's getting better and better. So it's such a great lifestyle. I think people need to know it's like so much fun.
Yeah, no, it really is. You know, I don't think there's any other food you can eat that when the juice is running down your cheeks, it's really a good thing. You know, it's not like grease or blood, you know, it's like, it's sweet juice, you know, that's awesome. And I think you're referencing the global burden of disease studies, you know, that they looked across like multiple countries over many, many years. And the defining point was, you know, the largest cause of death was not eating enough fruit. Like, it could be actually pinned down to that, you know, it's like
wild.
It's completely wild, you know. And I think honestly the biggest shift I made, and I totally agree, this is such minimal education is required, but the most potent thing that I think I ever learned was to look at fruit as a meal and to eat it on an empty stomach. I literally, Ronnie, I started doing that 22 years ago, and I started with breakfast, just, fruit on an empty stomach, because it digests way faster and it ferments if you put it on other stuff. And that's why people have a hard time with orange juice with their eggs and with their toast, or that's why people have heartburn when they have strawberries, you know, after their dinner for dessert, right? It's like empty stomach first. I started doing that 22 years ago. I haven't had a sick day since, you know. It's like, if people just started doing that, fruit, empty stomach, see it as a meal, you know, do that as much as you can. Some of the simplest information in the world that could be taught in, 15 minutes in every single school. And I think there's just, you know, we're starting it.
It would be easily adopted by young kids. It would be easy, like adults. It takes some time. You know, it takes a little bit of time for them to adjust to it and everything. But yeah, the kids seem to like really take to it, and so it's really cool. I mean, I think that we've been scheduled to talk about weight loss a little bit. I'm not sure if that's what we were. I'm not sure if that's what we have to talk about, or just everything. But yeah, I just think that we have a great solution. I think that's what's great about our message as well in this lifestyle is there's so many people that complain about what's going on in the world. And we've all got like conspiracy theorist friends who phone us up and tell us, oh, don't you know what they're doing now? They're like, the chemicals are in here, they're doing this, they're putting stuff in the clouds. This government's coming together with this secret group. You know, they've got all these different ideas. And then you've got climate change, and you've got environmental, you've got the use of land or whatever, we're not running out of land or whatever it is, and also obviously all the health issues, and everyone's complaining and everyone's talking about all the problems and mental health and everything, and we've got a solution. We're like, well, if everyone goes towards a fruit diet, I really believe that there's a lot of people that are starving in the world, and I just think that would go away, because fruit can be just grown so easily everywhere that if people saw it as a food source, then I would be like, it's a problem when people are, all their land is like grains and different things, and then the crops fail. Like, that's a real problem, and starvation and all these things could happen. But if you've got fruit growing everywhere, you know, and multiple types of fruit, and it grows so easily and so abundantly, I just see that as being, for starvation, for food scarcity and all that, I think that would be a major, major help. And then obviously health it solves many health issues immediately. It really does. It solves obesity probably straight away, really quickly as well. And then even things like the amount of land we use would just come down so much. Like, we'd barely have to use any land anymore you just wouldn't see these massive fields and things anymore for agriculture. And obviously the ethical side with the animals, it just feels like the world would come into a great balance. So everyone wants to complain about the government, and everyone wants to complain about everyone, but it's like, we need to do something, and we need to start that, make our own decisions and choices that are better. And I see that eating more fruit or a fruit-based lifestyle or diet as being something that directly eliminates so many problems. And that's the simple simplicity and the powerful thing about this message. And the second tweak to that is that it also is the truth about us as an animal, as our part on the earth. It's like we're kind of disconnected, or humans are sort of disconnected from the reality of who we are, our place in the earth, our place in history. Like, if we understand that we're a frugivore type species, and we can live on raw food as well, we can live on fruit as well, we can live that simple, natural lifestyle, that would just change the world so much. Because that's one of the awakenings I had when I saw that piece of it at the start. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, no one's ever told me that, but now I get it. Now I understand a lot of things. And that would change so much, because so much effort and energy, human energy, goes into like trying to solve these weird problems. Like, how can we get more cows in the south, like in the Amazon or something like that, or whatever? Like, how can we increase milk supplies, or what? Like, there's like scientists and companies and money going towards solving these silly problems that really we shouldn't be spending much time and effort on. And then all these pharmaceutical companies and doctors trying to create a pill to get rid of cancer, and it's never going to happen. And they're like, and then all the COVID stuff with like trillions or whatever it was going towards essentially a flu that almost no fruitarian had any problem with, right? So like all of this time, energy, and effort going towards kind of useless stuff. And if all of human energy and effort went towards really great productive stuff, and everyone was living into their 80s, 90s, 100s healthfully, it just would make the world would accelerate and be such a more amazing place, I think.
Absolutely. No, I think in that kind of a scenario, people wouldn't have to work all day to barely just make it, and wouldn't want to just lay down on their couch at the end of the day because they're way too tired. And, we wouldn't be worrying as much about the extinction of species and, the destruction to the rainforest and all the other places. And I remember when I first got into vegetarianism, I was told that on the same amount of land and resources, you could feed about 48 times the amount of people on a vegetarian diet. And what I've seen since then is that you could feed another 48 times that on a fruit-based diet. And people get confused about that. And it's just like you said, like, we're going into 3-dimensional crops that can yield like thousands of pounds in some cases per season just on that one 3D plot of land. That also it generates topsoil, right? It generates habitat for animals. It creates air and sequesters the carbon dioxide. Like, it does so many damn things for us. It's so crazy.
Yeah, imagine if in the future you get on a plane and you take off in the plane and you go up and there's no fields. Like, it's just all trees. Yeah. Like, because now you go up and it's fields, and it looks nice. I like it. Like, there's all these, I quite like the look of it. But that could all be trees growing fruits. And I like what you're saying, 3-dimensional crops, and that's, you made a great point that a lot of people miss, because people will say, oh, how would there ever have been enough fruit for human beings, and there's no fruit, and it's like they forget about the tropics, like they don't understand what the tropics looks like. And then it's not that fruit isn't like wheat or barley that comes once in a year. It literally can produce 4 times, maybe more. Some trees will produce like throughout the year. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and
And
for months.
yeah, and the amount is so huge for so little effort put in.
Yeah.
So everyone could easily be, everyone that had a little piece of land could be easily growing a fruit tree or a few fruit trees, and they would, that like one tree could produce a month of food for someone.
Yeah.
Or like 2 months maybe.
Yeah.
You know, it's such an interesting thing, and I just think that there's a real disconnection for people to nature. This is our connection back to nature. This is our, like, okay, I'm part of the earth. You know what I mean? And I'm actually part of this earth. I'm not some kind of alien species that doesn't fit in. And this is our connection. I personally think that there's some almost, I'm probably wrong about this one, but like I feel like there's some mental health aspect of like
huge
being around fruit trees is like super relaxing and calming to my perception. But I've had some experiences of there was a fruit festival in Spain one time, and we were in this Spanish, I don't know, mountains or whatever, and I went for a walk outside of the grounds, and I did not know the area at all, and I kind of went over this bridge and I looked down, and I was just awestruck by, it was like an orchard of orange trees, like an orange grove, but it kind of looked natural. Like it wasn't like they'd all been grown in a line. It was like, it just kind of come about naturally. And I was just sitting there looking at it like it just hit me so powerful.
Yeah.
And I just think there's something in that as well, of our connection with trees, with even a bit of tree climbing is kind of therapeutic or something. Like it's nice.
So good for us too.
It's the movement of it. It's you just feel like, oh wait, this is why my body does all these weird twists and turns. Like, so you can climb around a tree. You know, it's really, really fun.
Yeah. Release the back, and that hanging. Rest in peace, Robert Lockhart was a huge proponent of that, of hanging in trees and all that fun stuff. You know, like playing, and you know, I think it does kind of go back to our roots.
I tell you what, I'd actually like to do as a bundle contribution sometime, or a contribution to something if the bundle doesn't continue or whatever. But like, I would quite like to put together a book of some of Robert Lockhart's interviews and turn it into like as if he had written it. I'd quite like to do something like that and take some of his like great wisdom, because he put that together. He put that together in a way that I'd never seen. Like the idea of a lot of back problems and health issues are coming from the fact that our body's designed to hang and climb and have these movements, and we're just not exposing it to that, and a lot of people's backs are suffering. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely.
And before we move on to the subject, we got about 20 minutes. You know, another kind of point on this that I always like to throw out there, irregardless of the way you kind of look at it, but you know, I always remember reading one of the first times I read Genesis and in the Bible and stuff like that, where it talks about like, you know, the Garden of Eden and fruit trees. And then when they were cast out, it was like, you'll now have to toil the earth, you know, and suffer. And like, it's just, I don't know, it's kind of telling, even irregardless of what you believe about it, right?
Totally. And I think that, like, you know, we toil, we have to, you know, work for a living. We have to, everyone, and that's, you know, we talk about discipline and hard work. That's all good stuff. But like, there's no animal that does discipline and hard work. They just totally follow their instinct, and they go and find the food and they eat. And I'm not saying that we should get rid of work or discipline or whatever, but I think that there could be a future in which some people could just simply choose to live on the fruit and hang out and you know, have a tent or something and just chill, you know, and they could live, and there would be no stress. And we could maybe have situations like that where people could support themselves without having to work if they don't want to. But I think there's so much in that biblical story that is like that part of it. The second part of that is that women will have pain in childbirth. That was like the second thing, and that's so interesting. Not just with human women, but farmyard animals that get fed like inappropriate foods. they go through dangerous childbirths as well, and you need vets in there to check them out and all that. And that's really bizarre. You think, why would that happen? And I think there could be a little connection there. But that could also be, this is the thing we're forgetting, we're feeling the benefit to us first generation. We eat fruit, we feel better, good. But the interesting thing is it might have more of an impact second, third generation.
Huge.
We don't really know.
Yeah.
It could be that third generation, all of a sudden, it's like geniuses popping out all over the place and like physical Adonises, and we're like, whoa, that's our potential. Yeah. And we've been holding it back so long with all these other foods.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt that they don't make us like they used to. You know, and luckily, you know, our generations are a little bit longer than, you know, like some shorter generations with animals. But, you know, they've seen the same thing, you know, and in inhumane animal studies, you know, feeding them inappropriate diets and watching them degenerate over lifespans, you know, and I totally agree. You know, we're at the beginning of this, and I think it's only up from here as long as we make that effort and, you know, are spreading this out. It has a lot of potential. So we could get into this topic. I do want to, because of time, I do want to, and I apologize I didn't do this earlier, but if you want to give just a little micro intro about yourself as well and some of the other stuff you really like to do and spread, and then let's get right into the topic for the next, maybe give it 15 minutes or so.
Oh yeah, I'm Ronnie Smith. I guess people know me, like I run the UK Fruit Fest, so people often, and I get quite a nice little, like, a little bit of respect from people now and then, but it's kind of a small event. It's been fun to do. Like, people sometimes are like, wow, he has a festival. It's like, don't get too excited. Like, it's awesome. It's good. It's good fun. I'm glad that we can do it. And raw vegan, about 10 years, with a little few periods of falling off there, but about 10 years into it, and 80-10-10 style, pretty much. And, you know, followed the kind of Doug Graham approach, your approach, the low-fat, raw vegan diet. And outside of that, I live in Scotland most of the time. I love to go to fruit festivals. That's a big passion for me. Yeah. So I love to attend events. That's kind of why I run one. And that's a big passion in my life. I'm also, I do music. I try and put stuff on YouTube and put some content out there as well when I can. And we run a Fruity Fridays group. And do a little bit of coaching now and then. But I love running the festival. If I can just do that, sometimes I can, then that's pretty cool for me. I like that experience.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, man. All the stuff you do, it brings so many people together and helps get them, you know, good information and introduce new people into the community. And I just think it's really awesome. It's it really gives me a sense of like coming together, right? And, you know, you were saying before about, you know, maybe it'd be nice if, you know, people don't have to work and just chill out. But the beautiful thing is when people get into this lifestyle and they start to feel better, they're generally empowered to do something productive. And it doesn't matter what that looks like. You know, each person's going to have their own thing, but wellness generally does equal some kind of positive productivity.
Yeah. I get a real, like, there's been a few times, I like to follow that thing. People say your excitement or something. And sometimes I like these events. I love getting together with people. I love actually teaching this information and trying to figure out a life where I can get out there more and do more events. And I'd love to do more free events. I'd love to be bringing people, hundreds of people together totally for free, and teach about the diet and share information and just allow those people to get together and circulate and meet each other. Because that's kind of what a lot of people want. They want to meet other people on the same path as them. And when that happens, special things occur and people create relationships, friendships, connections, and that helps us get out there a bit more. And I had a friend that I said, are you going to be doing any speaking at events? And he said, oh, that's a waste of time. I'm just going to do online stuff, you know. And I thought to myself, I get that from some perspective, but he had learned so much from events, met so many important people, had so much education and so much support. Like, you forget the impact it can have on a person. It's such a beautiful thing. So I'm trying to figure out that even more. But yeah, when we come together, the raw vegan community, it's a really special thing. It's a really special energy, and everyone kind of, even I forget it, and I've been to, you know, nearly 30 fruit festivals. I've been to a lot, and every time I show up, I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I remember, like, I always go, oh yes, there's a great energy. There's always a good feeling.
Yeah, it is one of the most heart-opening atmospheres, and it's one of the places where the controversies generally kind of are laid aside, you know. And I mean, even still, you know, there's conversations and stuff like that, but it is like you said, a powerful energy. And I think one of the simplest ways that any of us can do it, right, is just to throw a fruit luck, right? Just like blow the horn, like, hey, let's come together and eat some fruit in the sun, you know, like. And
absolutely, I think, yeah, and I think more and more people, whenever someone says, if you find yourself saying, I don't know any raw vegans in my area, then that means you need to put on a fruit luck or a raw food potluck or a dinner party. It doesn't have to be like some major thing. And I don't think it needs to be 20 people or 30 people or 40 people. It could be 3 people or 2 people or a small. I've heard of people that put on a fruit luck or potluck, and one person turned up, and that person turned out to be their wife or their husband or their, you know, or their best friend or whatever. So it's definitely worth it, and you don't have to be an expert to put that on. You can. I was putting on fruit lucks straight away from coming back from Woodstock. I put on a fruit luck. No one came, but like I did something.
You did it, yeah. And they don't have to be raw foodists either. You know, people can come and that might be their first exposure to eating fruit as a meal, right? Like asking to bring friends along and stuff like that. And it's fun too, because you can be in a park and have like a gathering of people, have some fruit, and people walking by, you're like, hey, come on, come in here, have some, you know, and like. You know. I've
had wild experiences where, like, we were in a park and we have some fruit, and someone comes over and they're like, "Oh, I was a fruitarian for 5 years. I lost 200 pounds." And you're like, "What?" Like, and it's weird that everyone thinks there's no one out there that's ever done this. And I've had so many weird. I had that actually a couple of months ago. I went to a funeral and I was staying in an Airbnb, and the person that ran the Airbnb did not look like a raw vegan or whatever. But I was eating fruit in the morning, and she said, "Oh, I actually did that for 2 years. I was just eating fruits and vegetables for 2 years. I had a heart problem. My surgeon told me to focus on fruits and vegetables." And that meant to her, like, basically vegan. And it was amazing. I'm like, there is actually so many people that have, or maybe I attract them all accidentally, but I've bumped into so many situations where you get someone who's like, "Oh yeah, I've tried that," or "I did that for a while," or "I was vegan," or I'm mostly vegan," or whatever it is.
It's refreshing to see that more, right? It's like
the more you're out there with it, the more you see it, and it's not that everyone embraces it 100%. But I was in the supermarket, and a lot of people get these awkward comments and like, "Have you got a monkey?" and all that stuff, comments at a supermarket. But I had a girl say, "Are you a raw vegan?" Like in the checkout counter, and I was like, "How do you know?" And she said, "You're always coming in here. You get noticed. Like, people start to remember you because you totally stick out when you only buy fruits and vegetables." So there's way more people that have an awareness of this than we realize, and there's just not. We've not got a lot of. We've not got enough of these events and festivals and groups that have come together yet to show that, but they are out there, and I think. We'll figure that out. We'll figure out how to bring everyone together in a good way and enjoy that.
Absolutely, yeah. And something I always like to put forth with that too, because sometimes when people get into this and they're like going through the cash register with like their 40 bananas and maybe 40 pounds of bananas or whatever it is, right? They can feel a little self-conscious and feel like they're a little bit weird, right? But I always love to put forth like. It's something that you can be proud of and not necessarily prideful, but just be proud of, because it is, like we've said, it's the most powerful choice you can make. It makes a difference in every single realm of life. And just by you doing that, people look at it and it gets wheels spinning. And if you're excited about it, if you're having fun, if you're confident in what you're doing, that's going to spread a heck of a lot more than if you're like really scared and weird about it,
Yeah, I mean, I love, and you're a guy that you see life in a playful and humorous way, and like I'm just trying to figure out ways of how to just take it not seriously. So when people do come to you in the checkout or come to you in any situation and ask about what you're doing, why you're doing it, or get annoyed about it, like there is a kind of classic thing of the joke of like, have you got a chimpanzee, or have you got or why have you got all this fruit or whatever. And I do love trying to invent new little comments like, "Oh, my girlfriend came home with this chimpanzee. It's crazy. We have to buy all this fruit." Like just messing around with people and see what they say. You know,
It's
just
fun.
like totally like be acting like you're really angry about it. Like, "Oh my God, I'm having to buy all this fruit. It's crazy." Like or even like my doctor's forcing me to do this. I think he's an idiot, but like he's telling me this is the healthiest thing ever to do, and he told me that all animal products are going to give me heart disease and all this stuff, and I don't believe him, but I'm going to do it. I'll do it for a while, you know. Just, I don't know, just try and mess with people sometimes or just be funny, you know.
Yeah, make life into drama school for a little bit, right? I think it can be a heck of a lot of fun. And then, you know, at the end of it, you can walk away and try and keep the act up, or you can be like, nah, I just eat this, you know, like whatever you want to do, right?
Yeah. I think a lot of people legitimately just go, "Oh, that guy must have a smoothie place," or "That guy must have a," you know, I think a lot of people think that.
Yeah.
You know, you're from a local restaurant or something. But yeah, I mean, but I think we want to talk a little bit about. So I want to ask you this question because you seem to eat as much as you like as a raw vegan, and huge amounts, but you've never been fat, right? And that's
I've gained weight. I've gained weight. You know, I think there's a couple components in that. You know, one, I've always been active, and I think it's always important to put out there. You know, like in order to be truly healthy, you need at least a baseline level of activity. And I think I've always been active enough that it's really hard for me to overdo it, you know, and I also try to make a practice of really being aware and to some degree making a meditation of while I'm eating so that when I stop enjoying it, you know, I stop eating it, you know, and that doesn't mean I never go beyond that, but that's what I generally try to do. So yeah, I eat a lot. I mean, I usually eat somewhere between 8 to 12 pounds of produce a day, and, you know, usually somewhere between like 2,800 to 3,600 calories a day. I'm 6'1", you know, 180 pounds, and I've got up to 198 with muscle, but I've also got up to about that same weight or a little bit lower than that with less muscle. And what happened in that scenario was I was skateboarding, I was really active. This was in my first couple of years of a raw food diet. I was drinking big 2-liter smoothies of bananas and stuff. And I hurt myself to the degree that I couldn't skate for over 2 months. And during that time, I was still eating the smoothies, the same size, the same amount of calories, because I was depressed. And even though I didn't enjoy it, I was actually forcing it. And I didn't quite understand some things that I do now. And I did manage to gain weight, but it literally took forcing beyond enjoyment and actually sometimes even gagging. Cause like I'd still have, you know, probably 4 bananas worth of smoothie sometimes, but I'd be like, whatever. I'll just force it down, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I was telling Melissa about this, weird study that Michael Greger talks about. I was looking up some of his weight loss information when I was researching the book, and he talked about this. This is really bizarre. Like there was some place where they got people to stay in this place. They were trying to figure out stuff about how people ate, and they wanted to see how much social cues and things like that impact a person's eating choices. So they wanted to take all of that out of the equation, and they literally just fed people with like a pipe or something that gave out a liquid or something like that. So I don't know if it was like a smoothie or whatever, but they'd basically be fed by this kind of pipe. So they would go over and press a button, and they would take in this amount of food. And what happened is really weird. I don't even understand the results, but people that were at their perfect weight, or basically at a healthy body weight, they would continue to eat exactly the right amount of what exactly they needed to hold their weight, which is quite amazing. Like, but they just did it naturally. But people that were obese, this is what they were trying to figure out: is there something different about people that are obese? Like, why are they eating way more than average? What they found was their caloric intake went from being whatever it was, 4,000, 3,000, to like down to 300 calories a day. Like they way underate.
Wow.
And they were trying to figure out, is that the body saying, like, I'm really overweight and I don't need to eat. Like, I really don't need to eat much. I need to eat a basic amount, but I don't need to eat that much. And their hunger signals had to some degree just sort of switched off in that context, in that environment. So I don't know what the outcome of that was or what they went on from there, but it's really interesting, like, that people maybe do have a natural sense of how much they should eat, but the modern world, what they're surrounded by, the addictions, all of that stuff makes people really overeat, makes some people eat way more than they need. and causing these problems. And you were kind of, it seems like you were experiencing your intuition or your feeling was not to eat as much, but you sort of went over it for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and I definitely think the addictive side of food is a big issue with obesity, and the processed side of food is a huge part of it. And yeah, but yeah, there's we need to learn anyway on a raw vegan diet. Like, a lot of people think you can just sort of do it. You don't need, like, a lot of people don't like listening to the experts. You know, they're like, I don't want to listen. I just want to figure it out myself.
Mm.
With this thing, there's so few people that ever figured it out for themselves that you're way better off listening and learning from the bundle, from wherever. The bundle's a great source, but we do have to humble ourselves and realize we have sort of been trained to do something wrong, and we need to retrain ourselves. Mm-hmm. With weight loss, though, the statement that I made in the book was about you can eat more and lose weight on a raw vegan. Like, there's some, like, say, I mean, Dury and Ryder and Freely were pretty strong with this idea of you need to eat more calories, more carbohydrates. Yeah. That's going to make you, and I think they thought that's going to make you go and exercise. Mm-hmm. And burn the rest of it off. And I don't know if that really works for people, but what's been your thoughts or experience with weight loss? I'm sure you've helped a lot of people lose weight as well.
For sure. You know, I mean, I think for the vast majority of people, they undereat because they don't really understand caloric density and how much volume it actually takes to get their total calories in. So for the most part, most people, I find they generally just do lose weight in the first couple months of a raw food diet, until they really get to a place where they start to actually up their intake and get more in. And for some people, that takes longer as their digestive system adjusts, you know, and they learn to eat appropriate volumes, or they're not forcing like 2 giant meals thinking that they saw me or someone else doing that and trying to force it. But that usually takes time. And my one little put of input that may come into play with, you know, Dury and Ryder in the past, stuff like that, is part of me sometimes thinks that, you know, our personal experience trumps everything else. Like, that's what we think. And because he was so dang active, he basically, and I was in that situation at some points myself, being so active, it seems like it's impossible to overeat because you can't burn it all off. So I think maybe, and I can't say for sure, of course, but I think maybe some of that came into play where, like, to him is like, it's impossible to overeat, and any problem you have, you just have to eat more. I remember them talking about like emotional eating doesn't exist and other things like that. And if anything comes up, it's just hunger. You just need to eat more. And I think there is a baseline truth to the point that most people would do better with learning to eat more. But I also do definitely think there's an appropriate amount, because you can gain weight if you're either eating past your caloric needs, or you're not that active at all in the first place.
Yeah, and we got a little question here in the comments. Do you think there is validity of the idea that weight loss is toxin release? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, from everything I've learned, we do store some toxema in our adipose tissue and in our fat tissue. The stuff that we can't handle and deal with is basically buffered by fat. And when we're under eating, or if we're on a detoxification plan where we're basically, I mean, most detoxification plans they make you under eat. So when you're under eating, you're burning through more fat tissue, and certain things are released. And, you know, those can bring up symptoms. They can bring up headaches. They can bring up, you know, I believe they can bring up old memories and thoughts of certain foods as those residues are cleared from the system. And yeah, I think that's sometimes where people get mistaken and think that that's like, well, I got to eat this then because I'm thinking of milkshakes. And it's like, no, you know, like maybe you're actually just getting to a level where you used to eat milkshakes. You're peeling back the onion layer, because the body does store things kind of in that onion layer kind of fashion.
Yeah, I did an interview just yesterday with a fasting practitioner, and he was talking about years ago that he'd been at a fasting place, and there was an older woman there, and she was fasting, and there was tears coming out of her eyes, and they were yellow in color. And they said, eventually said, why are you're crying, but you don't seem to be sad? And she said, oh, this just happens to me when I fast. And she would fast apparently once a year or something. And the story went that when she was younger, that she had something like she'd been in Africa and there was malaria or something going on. And that she'd taken this, she'd been given a lot of this particular medication. I think it's called quinine or something like that. Mm. And that 50 years later, this was still coming out of her eyes. Right? So, like, when she fasted, like, some of this stuff would release from however it got in there, I don't know.
Yeah.
And there are various stories like that of the body sort of storing things, and then when there's a safe time or moment that the body can release it, and it's kind of interesting. But I do think that in terms of weight loss release, toxin release, I think that there's a few physiological things there where if someone goes in another thing about a detox or a juice cleanse is generally it's salt-free. So when you cut salt out of your diet, there's a lot of water that has to be retained to process that salt. When you cut that salt out, then you're cutting out a lot of water, and that's a drop in weight, a very immediate drop. That can be a 10-pound drop in weight, just the water.
Yeah.
People don't realize that. Yeah. On a low-calorie diet, this is why the keto diet and all that stuff works, is because they deplete their glycogen reserve, and the glycogen reserve also has to have a water store to process the glycogen. So they cut down the glycogen reserve, they get like a 10 or 20-pound weight loss very quickly. Yeah. But it just comes back when they like eat appropriately and everything, and there's not really lost any much fat.
Yeah.
So there's
they lose
that.
Way more muscle mass. Like they actually, like there's studies showing they actually lose way more muscle mass, and when they're working out, they actually gain less muscle mass. It's oh
wow.
Yeah, it's the opposite of what people think.
Yeah, and you know that in terms of, I guess what Gatis is in the comments, what he might have been saying is, do we think that it's like a lot of old hardened waste that's getting released? I've heard a fasting practitioner say 20 pounds of old hard waste can be released. And I've had friends that have been like, I just need this cleanse to start working and I'll lose all this weight. And they think that all their weight is like all this stuff inside them. Yeah. And I think there's some truth to that, where people have a lot of backed up food when they start off changing their diet. There's people that can go a week without passing. I mean, even Ted Carr told me that when he was in his teens and whatever, he'd go a week without having a bowel movement. And I was like, what was it like when it came out? It must have been just absolutely terrible, you know. But you think about a week's worth of food coming out, well, you're immediately going to be a lot lighter, right? Yeah. So there's those things, but I don't think there's a significant weight of toxins in the body. It would be more the water that would be with them, I would think. They would feel like losing weight.
Yeah. A saying that Doug used to say, or Price still does, but the solution to pollution is dilution, right? And the body holds more water weight the more toxic it is, the more toxemia that it's holding in its tissues and throughout. So,
and that's probably why as well some people that go on this diet, they feel like I'm losing my muscle mass, I'm losing my size, and a lot of that's maybe water. And Durian Rider used to say puffiness. I said that's not muscle, that's just puffy. That's just puffy muscle or something like that. I can't remember what he said, but he would talk about something like that. But yeah, I mean, for me, like on a raw foods diet, you can definitely feel like you eat more and lose weight. Yeah. And you can be forcing yourself to eat more and lose weight. And that's just simply because of the energy density equation. And the raw foods have more water, more fiber than processed cooked foods. So they are heavier, they are more voluminous, but they have less calories, which is fine because it matches what our intake should be. Yeah. But for people that are new to this, they're going to take a while to eat more. And there's a few studies on plant-based, not just raw food, but plant-based diets in which people have been offered a whole food plant-based diet for the first time, basically, and they can eat they're told eat as much as you want, and they lose weight because they only eat 1,500 calories, but in their mind they're eating as much as they want. They're eating the same volume as they did before, but they're taking in less calories. And the good thing though is they're completely satisfied. They're just as satisfied and just as happy with the amount that they're eating, but they're losing the weight naturally. And that would equate to a raw food diet as well, similarly. But when you get to the point that you can eat enough and you can eat enough calories and all that kind of stuff, you know, I remember like Andrew Perlott doing his experiment of can you gain weight on a raw food or a fruit-based diet or whatever, and he sort of showed I mean, we don't really know what he ate and what that meant, and where there's some nuts and seeds in there or avocados. Like, I'd be interested to see if someone could gain weight on, you know, sweet fruits and greens alone and no
I did.
avocados.
I swear I
You
did.
have?
I did. Yeah, that's how I did it that one time. And I talked to Andrew, because I was friends with him at that time too, and he did say that it was low fat. And I mean,
Right.
you have to go by someone's word or not, right? But he said he did low fat. But just like me, he said he literally forced it. Like, he was grossed out at some meals and like was forcing it just because he wanted to prove a point, you know? Because
Right.
from what I understand, it is actually harder to gain weight on simple carbohydrate, because your body can, in excess, urinate some out. But I think there probably is a threshold, and that's just my thought, you know, because my experience was that when I did force it, I still did gain weight, and it was months though. Like, it was about 2 months of overeating pretty consistently, and you know, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I couldn't find this for my book, but I'm sure I heard Dr. Neil Barnard talk about a study that compared American office workers and Chinese office workers.
Mhm.
And they basically ate the same level of calories, but the American office workers were far more overweight.
Yeah.
And it was put down to the fact that the Chinese diet was much higher in carbohydrates.
Mhm.
And the theory is that that carbohydrates are less efficient at converting into body fat. So you have to turn it into fat,
Mhm.
and you lose a certain amount of the energy in that process. The same with sugar.
Yeah.
Whereas what Melissa has told me about fat is that it immediately just gets stored as fat. Like, that you take in, especially like the fat of an animal or something, you can just immediately just add that onto your body fat without really any, you know, changing it or anything. So there's probably a good argument of it's harder to gain weight on carbohydrates. It's harder to gain weight on plant-based diet. But here's what I really get to is when someone is overweight and they want to lose weight, if they are already eating the amount that allows them to maintain their weight, so they're eating 2,500 calories, 2,000, whatever it is, and even if they're raw, to me, like, changing that diet to the only way at that point for me of losing weight is to cut down the calories. Like, I don't believe that, okay, if they go on 2,000 calories of fruit or 2,000 calories of juice or 2,000, like, I think you have to reduce the calories, whether that's by cutting the nuts and seeds out of the diet or whatever. But personally, I was overweight at one point and I wanted to lose some weight. And I went back to really simple fruit and veg. Like, my salad was like tomatoes, lettuce, like barely any like avocados, any fats. And but I could eat an abundance of fruit, and
Oh man,
my weight didn't budge. I didn't gain too much weight, but I didn't lose. So I realized that the body doesn't necessarily naturally just set back to the right weight. You do have to work on that a little bit. And I consciously started to cut down, and that's when I started to get weight loss. And that's not the experience that a lot of people have, because a lot of people are new to this, and most people that start eating raw foods will lose weight naturally and effortlessly, and it'll be very comfortable and easy for them. But people that are very experienced with this, that have no problem with eating abundantly, and let's say, like you're saying, they have an accident or an injury and they end up overweight for whatever reason, they're going to have to either eventually their activity is going to have to come up, or the amount they eat is going to have to come down. That's what I personally see, and I don't see any magic to, like, well, if as long as you eat raw food or fruit or the perfect diet, your body will just kind of naturally pull itself down to the right weight and not bother with storing the excess. Like, the body's just got such a tendency to store any excess and use it, that I just think that that's the way it works. I don't know what you may have a different feeling towards that. I don't know.
I mean, my experience is, for the most part, people have to work at gaining weight, you know, whether that means putting on muscle mass. Like when I put on muscle mass, because I put on 20 pounds of muscle in almost a year working out, I really needed to eat big and like purposefully eat big, you know. And but I think the limiting factor here that we could probably agree on is that's kind of incumbent upon having some base level of activity. If someone has no activity, it's going to be easier for them to gain undesirable weight. But if you are active, then you generally are going to have to force yourself to gain weight, or you're going to like force yourself by overeating, or you're going to have to really push yourself by training and eating a lot to gain muscle weight. So it's one of those things where it's like, you know, it's not to me something that anyone need fear. This is such a diet of abundance. It's like, you know, eat all you could care for, like all you can really enjoy. And if in, you know, the months you start to notice, hey, I'm gaining a little bit of weight, or hey, I'm losing a little bit of weight, they're pretty easy fixes. It's like either add in a little bit more calorically dense foods, or replace some of those with a little bit more leafy greens or lower calorie foods. And it's not like you're going to all of a sudden be like, whoa, you know, like either I'm crazy skinny or whoa, I'm like way overweight. It takes months and consistency to go in either direction. And but I do apologize, brother. I should go here. I have a talk starting 3 minutes ago with Jesse Bogdanovich. But
thank you very much, Chris. Good to see you. And I will leave and I will let you go on with things. And thank you, everyone, for watching.
Such a pleasure, man. I do want to say, though, like anyone who hasn't grabbed the bundle yet, we're probably looking at like 15 hours left or something like that. I recommend you go over to Fruity Ronster, give him some love support, grab the bundle, grab the book. His new book, Raw Vegan Myths Part 2, is really epic, and I think you guys will all learn a lot from it. So thanks again. Thanks so much, Ronnie. Really appreciate you, man. And always great conversations.
Check out the Ultimate Raw Vegan Bundle. It's only here till April 11th.
Ooh, don't forget to check out my raw recipes playlist in the top left, the video just for you in the top right, subscribe for more videos in the bottom right, and get your 3 free ebooks in the bottom left. Grab your free raw recipe app, available on iPhone and Android, with over 100 free raw recipes, common fruit and vegetable calorie breakdown, frickin' raw, some food combining chart, shopping cart function, and so much more.